Well, the North London derby has finished 2-1 to Tottenham Hotspur, a very late winner from Toby Alderweireld. And I know you spoke to Joe in good detail, Brian, before and after the game about Jose Mourinho and Tottenham, but he was under a little bit of pressure going into this match, mainly from supporters. Does this game or this result give him any breathing space?
Well, I think that pressure is diminished by the fact there's no crowds at the games, so there's no obvious given out. Obviously, there might be a lot of stuff in the press and in the media, social media. Today is an important day for him in that, you know, to beat Arsenal, who are their biggest rivals in many ways. But the truth of it is that they went into the match today 10th in the table for a team who were in the Champions League final last year. They've lost 11 league games this year. They lost 13 league games last year. They're a worse team now by far than they were last year. It certainly would have lifted pressure. I'm not sure whether he was feeling the pressure. I'm sure he's feeling he needs to do better and the team needs to do better. So it was important result from that point of view. It edges them closer to Sheffield United in terms of qualifying for the Europa League. I think that's the limit of their ambition now. Unfortunately, whether they really want to make it to the Champions League, I'm not so sure they do, but that's where they're at the moment. You know, if they could finish off the season with a few wins, everyone would be a bit happier. But they weren't very good today. But they just did enough to sneak it in the end, though Arsenal dominated possession.
Before we look at Arsenal, I suppose when you look ahead to next season, and Mourinho signed a long-term deal there with Tottenham, you know, it all comes down to Daniel Levy and him loosening the purse strings. He's going to have to give Mourinho money to invest in playing staff if they're to have any chance next season, you would think, of competing for titles.
Well, they're miles away from competing for anything at the moment. I mean, they haven't won any trophy in 12 years. Competing for the league, they finished out of Arsenal the last few years, and they finished second a couple of seasons ago when they should have really won it when going back to Leicester winning it, and they finished in the top four. But they're a long way off the top four the way they've been playing this season. The team needs a bit of revitalisation. It was an ageing team. There's not much youth has come into it in recent times. But where's that money going to come from now that they're not going to be in the Champions League next year? They obviously their income has dropped sizably with the fact that there's no crowds at the matches. And obviously there's a huge debt on the stadium still. They borrowed a huge amount of money this year in terms of paying off the stadium. So the only way they're going to generate money is if they sell some players. Will they end up selling Harry Kane and using that money to rebuild the team? Didn't go very well when they sold Bale last time out and got 7 players instead of him, and very few of them worked out too well for them. Lamella's probably the only ones that's still around. But so I think it's a troubling time for Spurs, a troubling time for the supporters. If they lose Harry Kane, where are they going to get someone that scored the goals that he has scored for them for the last 5 seasons? Very scarce.
Now, if you look at Arsenal, Mikel Arteta comes into that job. He'd never managed a club before. It was a bit of a shot in the dark, maybe to some extent, although we do know he had good coaching credentials from his time working under Pep Guardiola at Manchester City. Now, he has shown with Arsenal that perhaps he can work with limited resources, but again, if Arsenal want to get into competing for top 4 places, he's going to need to be backed by the top brass at Arsenal. And as well as that, like, there's talk of maybe a couple of players wanting to leave, Bellerin, Kolasinac. So there's definitely a rebuilding project there for Arteta. Will he be back, do you think, by the club?
Well, I think a lot of players have been on trial under Arteta since he's come in. They haven't performed before he was there. That's why he got the job. Emery was sacked. And now that he's in, he's looking at them very close. He's made his mind up in Ozil. They want to get him off the wage bill. If he's getting 350 grand a week, it looks like he's made his mind up on Guendouzi, although I think there's a player there. There's a player in him and a lot of potential. He's still a very young lad. He's only 22, but he's obviously making a point with him. He's not picking him. He's not on the bench. He's got a clear view of the game and a clear view of the behaviour he expects from the players. I think there will be an overhaul at Arsenal again of players. I don't think there'll be a queue of clubs wanting Kolasinac, given those performances for Arsenal. He was signed as a left back, left wing back. Now he's playing left centre back of three. You saw him today. Dreadful mistake in the goal. Always has looked cumbersome to me. He doesn't look particularly well balanced, or it doesn't have the agility for playing as a wing back either, the modern mobile wing back like Tierney gives him now. But I think Bellerin's a good player, but he's been out injured all year. But it just shows principles that players don't seem to have any now. The club have had to play him when he's been out injured for a lot of the last 2 seasons. But a player can just say, "Oh well, my contract's running down next year, I'm off." But I think he's a good player. I think he's one they'd want to keep. I think they want to keep Ceballos. But I think there's plenty of room for manoeuvre for him for buying and selling. And also I think that there will be money made available to him this year. They spent big money on Pepe. It wasn't his call. A lot of money for a lad of potential, a bit of a one-hit wonder last season. Scored loads of goals in France, but he hasn't reproduced that form. He may produce next year, but I think they have more room for manoeuvre on spending and adjustment of the squad than Spurs have.
And crucially, they still have an avenue into the Champions League through winning the Europa League.
That's a possibility. And crucially, they've also developed some very good young players of real potential, like Saka and Willock. We saw him coming into the game today, and several more who are on the fringes of it, who have got good experience this year and look like they'd be good backup players, if not starters.
So then, as a manager, do you think Arteta's been impressive?
Yeah, but look, Mourinho has won things. He's been an exceptional manager, and he's won things everywhere he's been. The job he did at Porto, Chelsea, Inter Milan, it made him. He was rightfully considered as the best club manager around at that time. It hasn't gone well for him at Manchester United. He still won things at Manchester United. Won the Europa League, won the Cup. What did he win? The League Cup, did he? Win the Cup or the League Cup? He won the Europa League. So, he's won. I think he's a bit away with that with the squad he's inherited at Spurs. He said all the right things about them, but they look way short for me at the moment, and went out with the Cups tamely this year, has to be said. So I think Arteta has more to play with, I'd say, at the moment.
So I wanted to ask you about Everton as well, Brian. They had a bad defeat. I know, they're going to stay in the Premier League. They're not worried about relegation, but again, they've nothing to play for either. I was just looking, the journalist Daniel Storey tweeted after their 3-0 defeat to Wolves that the players used by Everton today cost a total of £260 million. Now, that's a massive amount of money for a club like Everton to have spent, and their supporters must be looking at clubs like Sheffield United, like Wolves, coming up from the Championship, even Leicester City, if you go back another few seasons, who, I know their achievement was, a once in a lifetime almost, but it must be so frustrating for supporters to see that they've got an owner there, Mashiri, who's willing to spend money, but they've just got this bunch of players that just don't seem to be able to achieve anything, and they just seem to be constantly in a state of just mid-table flux.
Yeah, and change of managers. Yeah. And now they've got in one of the great managers, the great achievers as a player and as a manager, and a very good guy, and Ancelotti. Seamus Coleman came out very strongly after the match. He was harsh on himself and harsh on the other players, and harsh about their attitude. You talk about the amount of money the amount of money was misspent. I remember at the time saying, the money they spent on Sigurdsson, he was far too overpriced. Now, a good steady player, but without great pace, and he's getting on a bit as well. I think he was 27 at that stage, 28. He's at Swansea. He's been around the league, scored goals from set pieces. He's a kind of a number 10 type player. He's not a real central midfield player. He's not a wide player. He's not quick enough to play centre forward. But they spent 50 million on him 2 or 3 seasons ago. Alex Iwobi, kind of a fringe player, Arsenal with a fair bit of potential, but hadn't delivered on a consistent basis. Not a huge goal scorer. Another one up around the 40 million mark. Several other players were bought a few centre forwards. Tosun, the Turkish lad, he's out on loan now with Crystal Palace, out injured. Another one, spent big money for him. But lots of other players like that who haven't performed. So what Everton need is somebody making decisions on the recruitment side who makes good decisions in combination with the manager and spend money wisely. I mean, that's what Liverpool have done. They've spent out, they've paid out usually for the positions they need, the goalkeeper and need a centre-half, and they spent very expensively. They've also blended in some of the players that they had there very well and some of their own young players. But, you know, lots of clubs make big mistakes in spending, some to get away with it. Manchester United can get away with this, sign lots of players, make some mistakes, but didn't make a mistake. Fernandes looks like he's been a really good signing. Suddenly Pogba looks like he's a player again. But they've a lot to do, Everton. So they've got three really strong things going for them. They've got a very good manager, they've got a very wealthy owner, and they've got a great tradition. But the performances, and he's been trying to play some of the younger players. I mean, Davies around the middle of the field, Calvert-Lewin up front, he scored more goals this year. What's he on, about 14, which is more he's got the last 3 seasons put together. Richarlison, another one they spent a lot of money on, a bit moody, not consistent, but you know, they've got a good manager now and they've got that tradition, they've got ambition about a stadium, but at the moment the team just isn't good enough.
And you wouldn't be critical of Ancelotti? You think he's probably done as well as he can with the players he has?
I don't think he's done as well as he can, but I think he's very much at a stage of looking at the characters he has and evaluating them and deciding on whether they're going to be part of his plans for next season. And until he has a bit of time to sort it out, I mean, he's Moise Keane was another one who was foisted on him. I don't think, did they borrow him? He's on loan from Juventus.
Well, he was bought.
He's boss, and they spent a lot of money on him as well. He's another one. So, you know, young player with potential, but only with potential, paid a huge amount of money, not a consistent goal scorer, not a regular in the Juventus team. So, you know, I think his evaluation of players will be much better than what's gone on prior to him coming into the club. I think he's using this time to assess them. He's playing some of the young players, giving you Anthony Gordon, giving him a go, experimenting with systems a little bit as well. Gomez in the middle of the field, he's come back from injury, the awful injury got against Spurs, but very one pace in the middle of the field. And young Davies is one pace as well, so that's an area where they need more energy lost. Idrissa Gueye, haven't really replaced him. I know they've got some midfield players out injured as well. So, you know, he needs time.
Keep the faith, Everton fans. Just to touch on a couple of things there before we finish, Brian. Look, Manchester City, day of reckoning for them tomorrow. Let's look at the worst case scenario. If they do lose their status as Champions League team and don't get that qualification place for next season, if they're banned for the next 2 seasons, would you be worried for Man City? Would Guardiola leave? Would De Bruyne leave? How many, you know?
I think a lot will depend on how the rest of the season goes. I mean, I have them as one of the favourites for the Champions League this year, give it that the draw was tough. But the draw was always going to be tough if you're in this stage of it. If they can get by Real Madrid, they have to be one of the favourites. And if they won the competition this year, would that affect Guardiola's thinking that he's achieved that with them? I think I think there would be something about him that would say, well, I'll stick this out now. We've been harshly treated. If they're out of the Champions League for 1 year, I think he would stick with it. And then what would they be like in the Premier League next year if they don't have to play in the Champions League? I mean, I said last season, I think lots of people said that Liverpool won the trophy that Manchester City wanted to win, and vice versa when Liverpool won the Champions League. This year, it could go the way that they both really wanted. Liverpool to win the league. Liverpool have won the league. Manchester City to win the Champions League, it's going to be a harder task than where they are. But, you know, I think that would be very satisfying for him and for them as a club. I don't think it's going to affect their finances. There seems to be unlimitless amount of money there. They haven't been spending too wildly in the last season or two. I think the financial fair play has held them back a little bit. They do need to do a bit. Looks like Aguero's time might be running down. Not certain that Jesus is going to be good enough. Certainly the centre-back problem is one they've got to deal with. Might need a replacement for Silva in the middle of the field, although Bernardo Silva can fill in there. Sterling is getting even better.
Foden's improving as well, yeah.
Yeah, Foden is the one young player that looks like he's ready to start on a regular basis. So, even if it goes against them, I don't think it'll have that much of an effect. I think they can survive the financial loss, and it might bring back their focus on the Premier League and help to have a real battle next year, but maybe more than just Liverpool and Manchester United seem to be getting their act together. Chelsea should be the better of a longer time with Frank Lampard in control, and we might have a more competitive league.
And Brian, look, I know you spoke really well before the match kicked off about Jack Charlton, and I suppose just the fact that maybe he didn't put enough love into League of Ireland football and showing that kind of thing. But overall, I know you spoke really well about Jack and just kind of the influence he had on football in the country, and perhaps inspiring people by the team's performances and that kind of thing. You did, in case anybody missed it, I know you had one interesting interaction with him over in Sheffield many years ago.
Yeah, well look, first of all, my sympathies go out to Jack's family. I think they're well aware of the great service he gave to Irish football, and it's been the talk of the country for the last couple of days, and will probably continue so for next week, and rightfully so. It was an amazing time for people that love football prior to the Jack Charlton era, and for those that didn't love football until that era and became part of the converted and the new fans. And that was good for the game. It was great for the game. The style of football wasn't brilliant, but the days were great, and the excitement around the matches, and the inspiration that was there for people to get involved in the game, for people to pick up the coaching bug, for kids to start playing, for kids to dream about playing for Ireland at some level. That had a major influence on the development of Irish football. My experiences, the earliest times were I was at the World Cup in 1966. People are probably bored with the story now, and I saw all England's matches, and I saw Big Jack and his brother winning the final against West Germany 4-2. My next involvement was in 1983 with the Irish youth team playing at the European finals under Liam Toohey. Myself and Noel O'Reilly were the assistants. We'd been at the finals in Finland the year before, qualified again 83. We were based around the Yorkshire area. We were staying in Sheffield, and we got the use of Sheffield Wednesday's training ground. Jack was the manager, and I remember at the end of one of the training sessions, we were wrapping up and collecting up the bibs and the balls. That's what we would have had at the time. We might have had a few cones as well. BBC, as Noel used to call them, the balls, bibs and cones. But however, our gear was quite an indication that we might have been the Irish football team. It had Ireland on the back of them, and they were all green. But I remember Liam rambling over towards Jack, and he was about to approach Jack and thank him for the use of the training ground, because Sheffield Wednesday's first team were training at the same time. And Jack said to Liam, he confused us with the Northern Ireland, and he said to Liam, how was Billy doing then? Thinking that Liam knew Billy Bingham very well. I was close to Billy Bingham. But anyway, Liam in his own inimitable style said, I'd say he's doing great. I haven't seen him for a long time. And Jack looked a bit confused at this answer, didn't cop it. But within a couple of short years, he was actually manager of the Republic of Ireland. So it was a funny one. But look, I had other contact with Jack after, when he was in the dressing room the night in Leeds, and we were playing England in the group game, European qualifiers in '85, and Jack came in at half time on Liam's team talk, and Jack took over and told the team basically to start building the ball up the pitch, which was the total opposite of what Liam Toohey would have indoctrinated into his players. Liam loved the passing game. He loved having lads in the middle of the field that could get on the ball and pick a pass and link up and cross it. And Jack had to go at half time, and I knew it was the end of the Toohey's Tots era, which was a great era in Irish football. And after the match, Liam went to Jack Kelly, or addressed Jack, he was the secretary at the time, and told him that was it, he was done. And it was very sad for all of us, because we'd had great success. Liam was Liam was a great man, great football man, part of the brilliant Shamrock Rovers, 6 in a row, cup winning teams, managed Shamrock Rovers, played for Newcastle, managed Ireland. It was a sad way for his era with those youth teams to play. It wasn't a night I like to think back on, but you know, Jack was then in charge, and Irish football was changed forever in terms of the profile of the game and the numbers playing the game, the numbers of clubs that sprouted up all around the country as a result of those, you know, remarkable days of '88 in Germany, 1990, Italia 90, and USA 94, and you know, they were great times. You know, for us who worked in the League of Ireland at the time, we were a bit left out of some of the parties because Jack was no admirer of the League of Ireland or the people that were involved in it, and it wasn't part of his brief, it appears, from the FAI to show any interest in any other part of the game. His job description was, can you win some matches for us with the senior team? And that's what he did, and that's what he did very, very well indeed. So it's a sad time.
Absolutely, and condolences to all of Jack's family. Brian, it's Crystal Palace against Manchester United for me and you on Thursday night, so we'll be chatting to everybody and off the ball then. Thanks very much.
Look forward to that one, Stephen.